Okay. We're live.
All right. Well, let's call the May 14th Avon Town Council electronic meeting to order. This meeting is viewable at the Town Council, at the Town of Avon Government YouTube channel. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
United States of America.
America,
Republic,
to stand,
under God,
God,
liberty and justice for all.
liberty.
Julie, roll call, please.
Steve Weisenbarth,
Present.
Aaron Teveball,
Present.
Don Loudon,
Present.
Greg Zuzin,
Present.
Robert Pope.
Present.
Did you want to indicate who the other participants were, Julie?
I can. We have Chief Sean Stoops, John Taylor, Greg Garatas, the financial advisor, town's financial advisor, Jody Dickey from Planning and Building, Assistant Chief of Police Brian Nugent, Ryan Cannon, Public Works Director, Dan Taylor, Town's Attorney, and Tom Klein, Town Manager, and myself, Clerk Treasurer.
Thank you, Julie. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Does anybody have any questions regarding the consent agenda?
No.
I only have
No.
one item, and I talked to Julie about it earlier today. It's on page 36. It's the William Scotsman invoice. I've talked to Tom and Ryan about it as well. There's more to come on that, but I just wanted to let you know that that was my only question. If nobody else has any comments, would somebody like to make a motion, please?
I'll make a motion that we accept it.
We have a motion by Steve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Aaron. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Steve Weisenbarth,
4.
Don Loudon,
4.
Aaron Teveball,
4.
Greg Zuzin,
4.
Robert Pope.
4.
The next item on the agenda is the first of 2 public comments. Comments may be emailed to tklein@avongov.org or may be provided in the comments section for the meeting on YouTube. The public may comment on items on the agenda that are not a public hearing or on a specific matter within the council's jurisdiction. Is there anybody who would like to come forward at this time during public comment?
I'm checking my email right now. I don't see anything. YouTube is a few seconds delayed, but I do not see any comments. There is a second public comment time at the end of the meeting as well. So if there is a delay and someone comments, I can check that a little later.
Okay, with nobody coming forward, then we will close the first of 2 public comments at this time. Next item on the agenda is council comment and liaison reports. Ms. Loudon.
Greg and I met with John Purdy, Citizens Bank on yesterday, I guess, and discussed the parcel at Ronald Reagan and US 36, that vacant lot that is there that we had talked about earlier and had put in the budget for a maximum purchase amount of $100,000. And we discussed with him that we needed to get with Greg Garatas and see where we stand now with all the changes due to the COVID. Based on our income, not sure that we can still even pursue that offer. We did discuss with him the fact that the town does not wish to pay over $100,000. NDOT did buy a portion or right away of that parcel, 0.043. They paid Citizens Bank $10,400. Greg asked if we could subtract that from our $100,000. They quickly said no. We also asked if we could get the $100,000 to be our max purchase price without any additional closing cost, and they estimated those to be about $1,500. and they again declined that offer. So Greg and I talked a little bit more about that, and if we were making that purchase, we would be making that purchase and just sitting on it until either NDOT or the town needs it for further road improvements there along Ronald Reagan and 36. We wouldn't be able to afford with our current budget to improve the property in any way, to even add gravel to use it for trailhead parking or anything like that. So that's something that maybe the rest of you should all be thinking about and deciding how you want us to proceed with that expense or purchase. The Hendricks County communications meeting was canceled again due to the virus, so nothing to report there. That's it.
Thank you. Steve?
Yeah, I've got a few things. Probably the one thing I could say, the Solid Waste District Toxaway Day is this coming Saturday at Hendricks County Fairgrounds. Starts at 8 o'clock. It's over at 1 o'clock. It's going to be a big thing, and it's already been widely publicized. You've probably heard about it, but this will be a time where people will be careful to, they're not going to have collecting of your zip codes. They're going to look at license plate numbers. So the no touch is definitely the thing that they're looking at there, but they've got New Genesis in full force working the fairgrounds. Health department's in agreement with the methods. And so that's looking like that's moving pretty decent with all the precautions. I will be attending their meeting coming up on the Solid Waste District on Tuesday, the 26th. So that'll be 7 o'clock in the morning. And there are some things that we're going to be working on there at the Linton location, some things. Yard waste recycling's been open to the public since May 1st. Let's see, the other thing is the district's finalizing a lease with Danville on leasing a district office on that location. And so that'll be discussed at the 26th meeting. So a few hot topics going on. The other things I could think of is the Purdue Extension has the website has information about the online local government webinar. So that might be something we want to look at. That's on May 19th. So they have May 19th or May 20th. So you have two options there. So check out the Purdue Extension website for that. And Stormwater Board, I'll mention that everything's been going with email on that. Ryan's been a good communicator with that. Change orders, yes. I forget if we have it in our packet or not, but due to veteran delays, time and material and potholing and things like that are needed to contain costs. So that is, we're saying go ahead with that. We gave staff the okay with that. The work on Avon Heights, Maple Drive is kind of one of the main things on the stormwater going on. And then let's see, I'm trying to think of what else. The only other thing I can think of besides that is election coming up. It'd be good for all of us to kind of get out there and anyone's listening, you can vote early for Hendricks County elections. They are going on. I'll be volunteering at the polls on June 2nd. And just encourage anyone that wants to or could to get with their party and just look to volunteer. That's all I have. Thank you.
Steve?
Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
I think last spring, the West Central Conservancy District had a grant, an open grant period where people could request grants, and we were fortunate enough to win that bid and get some park benches. Tom, how many did we get? Anyway, it didn't matter. So I'm just wondering if, okay, I'm just wondering if they're having that again this year, and if so, then Tom, I would, or Ryan, I would suggest that we try and get a grant in there since we kind of missed out on the fall one.
Okay. Yeah, that is different than the solid waste, but yeah, WCCD versus.
Oh, no, I meant the one that you're on, the Toxaway.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I know there's grants that they're always pushing for. Right now, there's, everyone's antsy to get out there. And I think because everyone been cooped up at home, they're cleaning out all their waste and things, and my home included. So, you know, it's which is good. I can kind of enjoy this kind of board, but good point.
Real quick too, we are doing our heavy trash. We rescheduled heavy trash for July 11th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Good point.
You're
Okay.
gonna update the website then for that, Tom?
Yeah, Delbert's working on the PR and we're gonna post it next week.
Aaron, anything for us?
Yeah, Mr. Pope and I had a long call this week and started the process of getting things together for Mr. Klein's evaluation expectations moving forward. I think we got a really good start. And so I think he was going to send out an email to get some feedback from all of you. And then at that point, we can move forward with an executive session for us to discuss things. And then to schedule one after that to meet with him moving forward. I think we have a good plan and a good process. And so what I would like to see is if this is successful, then we move to the all the supervisors and use this and kind of adopt it. And so we've been offered all the help and the resources and assistance from Mr. Westfall and all of his people that help him kind of go through not only doing the training, but giving us any of the resources that we need as far as the documents and whatnot. So be looking for that. And once we get our information together, we can move forward with it.
Thank you, Aaron. Robert.
Thanks, Greg. Aaron stole one of my items there. Just an update on the evaluation for Tom, expectations for Tom. One correction, I just sent that through text rather than email. The other main thing I wanted to talk about was just the police department highlights. Thanks to Chief Stoops for these. So our new officers are finishing up their 40-hour police basic course. Should be qualified to begin their field training very soon. Officer Richards is doing well in that field training. It should be completing the Law Enforcement Academy this COVID-19 restrictions pending. Officer Ellsbury has started his field training and will be released on his own sometime this summer. The Police Merit Board did not meet in April or this month. No business. We anticipate we'll have the next board meeting in June 8th. And as you guys are aware from the stats sent out earlier this week, April calls were down to 583 in comparison to April of 2019. There were 1,207 calls for service, so less than half. So overall, just raw data indicates that reported crimes are down. That's it for me.
Thank you, sir. I just have a couple things. First of all, I want to thank Rudy and Delbert. I think they were the ones that put together the plan to put those banners up over at Avon High School and to congratulate the seniors. It's kind of going to probably go down as the lost class of 2020, but I compliment those guys on thinking outside the box and getting that out there. Continue to thank Tom and staff. I think they're doing a great job. And as you can see, we're starting to create an exit strategy out of this COVID situation, and we'll continue to do so. Ryan, my question to you is, do we have an RDC meeting on Monday?
We do, yes, sir.
Is it 6 o'clock and is it virtual?
6 p.m. and it's virtual, yes.
Okay, thank you. But that's all I have. We don't have any old business, so we'll go to new business. And we're going to talk about the capital funding plan and financial sustainability analysis. We have Greg Garitas with us tonight, who is our with Financial Solutions Group, and he will present an update to the capital funding plan and financial sustainability analysis. Both plans account for potential reductions in revenue as a result of the pandemic. And Greg, we'll let you walk us through this.
Okay, thank you very much. And Tom, are you going to present it or show it on the screen?
Do you guys want me to show it on the screen? Or do you have?
It's probably good for everyone if anyone's watching to see it, I got my laptop, but yeah, that's a good idea.
And I'm like you, Steve, I've got another screen off here to the side, so I'm looking at. And Tom, we were going to start with Exhibit B, page 2. And this is, I want to thank Tom and Ryan because we've been Zooming almost every week, trying to put this together. And this is our annual capital improvement plan. And it's very, very important because there is a lot that we're trying to accomplish with reduced revenues. And you're going to see that even more when we go through the sustainability. We wanted to talk right away about project number 1, which is the project that we've been talking about for a couple of years, actually probably many years, Ryan, and you're going to help me out here, I'm assuming. And that's project 1 with a total now cost of $20,305,000. As you can see, what we're hoping, and Ryan and I have come up with a recent plan, that this 15 million that is slated in 2020 obviously will be a debt instrument and will require us to seek financing. What we're hoping is that, Ryan, and if you want to speak to this, how we may break this up into I guess I'm not going to say a phase 1 and a phase 2, but you want to describe your bid package?
Sure. Yeah, if the council decides they want to move forward with this project, we obviously would like to get it bid and get it construction started. And so the project would have a cash component, but then it would also have a bond component. And Greg has asked for some flexibility on that bond component in terms of the timing of the sale. And so we're proposing like a 2-tier notice to proceed to the contractor once we award the project. And so we're kind of calling the first notice to proceed would be to allow the contractor to expend about $5 million, which is what we plan to spend for cash. And then we'd have a second notice to proceed that we would issue, and we've put like an April 1st of 2021 date on it to give Greg some flexibility in selling the bond at the best time that we can based on the current conditions. So if the council chooses to move forward, we would kind of have that 2-tiered approach. $5 million is about 1/3 of the cost of the project. So we really don't think there's any way that the contractor would get to $5 million even by April 1st of 2021. The first phase would be a lot of, it'd be some of the sanitary sewer work, maybe the bridge just east of Dan Jones, some tree clearing, things like that, to be able to give the utilities some time to get out of the way. And then maybe start some of the road work, and maybe some of the drainage work can be done over the winter, depending on weather conditions. So we'd allow the contractor to get started, which would in the end help us better on the back end of the project, to have a closure date that would be shorter than if we didn't do so.
Brian, I have a question for you. It looks like from your sources and uses that you gave us in the packet, we have already paid out some funds to different contractors or design firms, etc. Is that part of the $5 million, or would the $5 million be in addition to what we've already paid out?
The 5 million would be in addition to what we've already paid out. At least that's the way we're showing it now.
So if I take it looks like we've paid out $1,761,588. We're going to add 5 million to that. So we'll have over almost $7 million of cash into this project.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And Greg, that's the plan. That's kind of like plan 1, again, assuming you want to do this. And what that would do then is it would get it started. And then we would be able to assess how much property taxes we get past June 30th, and more critical past December 31st. And right now, we've been in contact with the auditor's office. They believe that the June 30th will be on time at this point in time. And we've looked at how many taxpayers are escrowed and coming in that were coming in May. The problem is going to be, or the challenge is going to be, is it, since this is highly commercialized, if there will be a commercial decrease that is material, that we would have to, while we get this rated, we would have to take into account, and then we may have to back up. Ryan, I think this would also allow us the possibility of going after some grants from the CARES Act that you and I've been talking about. And if nothing else, at least submit an application, of which I've been working with the Indiana CPA Society and getting a lot of information on those. And those are economic development type of grants. So that would give us a little more time to maybe get a little free money, keep moving if you want to. I mean, it's still an awful aggressive project during these times.
Well, my question is nobody has a crystal ball. Is it better, and I agree with what Ryan just said for one, but no one has a crystal ball. Is it better to go out and get your bond now and get a better interest rate, or wait till April of 2021 and what the interest rates will be then?
Well, and Greg, to answer that, we've been in the bond market. There's bad days and there's good days. And had you asked me that 60 days ago, I would have said, oh, heck no. Matter of fact, the bond market actually even closed down for a little while. Now, after 30 days later, we sold a record low interest rate bond for 15 years for Shelby County. So what we're proposing here is that we would get our documents approved for or get them tweaked a little bit, because this may switch over, but get them set up, get ready to go. And then as we see the timing and as we see how the market's doing, we'll be ready to go. So the answer is, worst case scenario, we go March of next year. Best case scenario, we're going July and August. But it will take us working with the rating agency, and I'd rather that not be by Zoom, but it may have to be. So we're trying to build in complete flexibility for timing. So what we wanted to make sure, is there any other questions specifically on that large project? Because most of the other ones, as you see, will number one, be coming into a whole bunch of different pots of money, and we're going to go through some of those. We're going to go through some of those cash flows now. But any more questions specifically on that one?
Well, you may be talking about it later, but the question I have, and Tom sent out an opinion or options regarding the county contribution. And within that, and if you can explain this, it says the amount would be part of the bond for the project, and the county would make annual payments for the principal, but not the interest on the term of the bond. Isn't their contribution a lump sum upfront dollar amount?
Go ahead, Greg.
You're muted, Greg.
Sorry. When Tom made the presentation to the county council, and then it's my understanding, Tom, the county council met a couple weeks later, they confirmed that their offer of $1,750,000, number one, was no interest, and that was a payment over time. It was my understanding, if it was an upfront payment, they offered you at the time of that meeting, Tom, somewhere down in the $1 million. Do I recall that correctly?
So over time, then what's over time? They're going to pay $1.75 million.
over the life of the bond issue.
So if the bond issue is 15 years, they're going to give us 1/15 then every year.
Yes, sir.
That stinks.
Yep.
Thank you,
I
Tom.
agree.
Thank
I
you.
agree.
Yes,
It's not right.
No.
Well, you represent both of us, Greg, so maybe you have some input that you can probably share with them for us.
Well, I suggested at the time of the meeting, Tom knows that it would be similar to what we've used in other communities. But for what, I mean, they are going to have some cash crunches too. And, you know, but that was, it was beyond, it was a political decision, Greg. I was just, you know, as a financial advisor, sure, I was trying to represent you as well as them. But the point was, it was actually out of my hands. It was their decision.
Well, the fact of the matter is, this is strike number 2 against the county towards Avon, in my opinion. But that's not for this conversation.
So
You know, Greg-
1/15 is what?
Comments at this time as well.
Greg, Greg Zuzan, I strongly agree with you. And it's just, I think it's very unfortunate that we just need to get the county to kind of work with us a little better. You know, I think, Don, you were good enough to point out the last meeting about how the county hasn't been working with us on the CSX bridge and some of the others. And
Right.
so, you know, I know we have the election coming up here, you know, but boy, we just got to get the ears of these folks and say, look, you know, we're a smaller community and we really absolutely need your participation. And I agree with Tom Klein's approach is take the percent of 14 point something and say, because of that roadway, that's the number we should be using. You know, I agree. That's enough said on it, but it stinks. Yeah, you bet.
Greg, let me ask you another question. So if we do a 15-year bond, they're basically going to pay us $116,666 a year.
Okay, I think we put that in the cash flow. Yes.
Where do we come up with the money to pay the contractor? They're not going to want us to pay them over 15 years.
Well, right, Greg, our bond size will include the covering their money over time.
So our bond size then increases our reserve, increases our legal fees, increases our financial cost, increases our interest carry, because they want to structure it this way.
Yes, sir.
And they think they have financial situation. We have a bigger problem than they do.
That's right.
So Tom and I did talk about the various options, and I believe he talked them over with you. I mean, I would say that, you know, an option would be going back to the council. At some point, I would recommend some council members go. I've seen that in other towns, and I don't know if that helps or hurt, but that's what I have seen.
So are we going to the Hendricks County Council or are we going to the commissioners? Because it ended up being a commissioner vote when it's typically a county council decision, correct?
Funding is usually county council. It's probably both, Dawn. It's probably really both entities, because one has to okay what they're doing as far as the interlocal agreement, and you know, Dan might be able to help me, but the other one has to include the funding.
I mean, we're kind of pushed into a corner here because our constituents and the residents are wanting us to broaden our tax base, and this is an opportunity to you know, move that forward and get that road widened down there so that we can move forward with the warehousing district. And yet here we are trying to figure out how we even can do that financially after the county's decision. And that's just sad. It's a bad place to be.
Well, and the
And-
flip side is there are proven projects down on 70 and 39
Yeah.
that the county
Right.
benefits from.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really a sad day for Avon.
Yeah, it's a hard pill to swallow for sure.
And because of that, guys, I look at, we really just need to press forward with, I'm glad staff's put together those options. And I think we need to kind of go one option. And if that doesn't work, go to the last one. You know, I think I told several of you how I felt on that. So
Mhm.
That's all I have, sorry.
you know,
Well, going back to the plan, you see the various other projects, we've lined them up all the way from 1 to 32. And you can, for the public or anyone that's hasn't seen this before, the top section are the projects that we're funding, and you see our local share, and then you see the various years, and then this falls back into many pages in the document on individual funds. Down here in this section is the developer finance projects. And that's the projects that we're working with developers on at this point in time, specifically Avon Landing, and you'll see that coming up later on the agenda. And that's awesome because we've gone a long way, all of us, to get there. So Tom, do you want to go back? You want to go now to the cash flows?
Yeah, what page do you want me to go to?
Let's see. The first cash flow is going to be coming up to looks like it's page 49, Tom, the TIF itself.
Okay, go ahead and start talking and it may take a little while to get there.
Okay, so on page 49, what we've done is we've scheduled out the TIF fund itself with the 2020 bonds that we have been talking about, with the estimated revenue. And Greg, we did on this sheet put in the $115,000 of county revenue. We included the other projects and the fact that we're trying to do some of the projects out of cash on hand. And so you'll see that embedded in here also. So this is only about the 15th iteration of doing this. And so it will change probably on a monthly basis, page 49, Tom, on a monthly basis as things get solidified. And remember what we're trying to achieve with Ryan on project number 1 is to get it out to bid, get a number on the bid so that we can really see if it's 20 million, maybe it's 18 million, maybe it's 22 million. And Ryan, I don't know if you want to comment on that at this point in time, but this is the cash flow, including the 2020 bonds and the TIF. And as you can see, and I think Tom articulated this to the other entities, we don't, by using a lot of our cash, we will not have strong balances. We're trying to use as much as we can before we move forward on a debt.
Question I have regarding revenues. How much do we usually generate on an annual basis in TIF revenue?
Over the 3 million too, Greg, and that's something on Monday night. I'll be presenting the annual reports because I don't think we've done that yet, right, Ryan?
Yes, no, we did do the annual reports, Greg. We're gonna do the no excess AV on Monday night.
So we'll be going, but that's up here in the estimated revenue line, Greg. And I believe what we did is we took 95%. So we have decreased it. We did not assume any growth in the tax rate or any growth in the AV.
2019 was 3.4 million. 2018, 3.1 million.
And that's in the sustainability in the town.
Yep. 2017, 3,075,000. So do you want to talk about more about the 100 South product, or do you guys want to come back to that at the end and have more discussion?
You mean, do you want us to make a decision on these options that you sent out earlier in the week?
Or have a discussion on it? We can, if you want to wait, we could wait.
Well,
Yeah.
I guess we can wait in case Greg wants to hop off. I don't know if he wants to stay for the whole meeting or not, or.
Well,
Okay.
Ryan, do we have to make a decision this evening?
You don't have to. I was hoping if the council wanted to move forward, my timeline was to actually advertise it for bids on Monday. And we were going to open bids on June 25th. So that was my schedule. If you guys want to move forward, I kind of explained to all of you guys, our hope was, there's this July letting with NDOT. And there's no letting by NDOT in June. So June is a good time to bid a project. We don't have to do that. We can wait, but if we don't bid it in June, I would probably recommend that we wait to bid it till probably like September or October at the earliest. Typically July and August are not good times to bid projects.
And if we can bid it, but if we don't like what the bid comes back at, what are our choices? Can we reject it?
We can, yes. And even we're already going to put a provision in there. We can hold the bids. Typically, we put a provision in there that we can hold the bids for 90 days. We may put in there that we can hold the bids for 120 days, which means the contractors can't withdraw their bids. Otherwise, they would risk losing their bid bonds. And so we'll put that in there, which would give us some time. But I think, from my perspective, the sooner we know how much it's going to cost, the better off we're going to be. Otherwise, it's kind of this big elephant on our back, and we don't know if it's going to be 12 million, if it's going to be 15 million, or if it's going to be 18 million. So again, that's your guys' decision. We can wait, but if we want to hit this June bid window, I need a decision probably tonight.
What do you think?
What did you say, Greg?
Yeah.
Aaron, what did you think? Aaron, Robert, anybody else, Steve?
I would like to see moving forward with it, but that's only because I'm thinking like Ryan is, trying to get the best number, get our number out there now, and then we have a fallback method to go to the fall if we need to.
I would agree with that. I think we need to continue to try to move it forward. And if you can get that 120 days that you're talking about, Ryan, that might allow us to speak with the new council that comes in and the new commissioners that come in this fall. Might give us an opportunity to meet with them and see if we can get them to up their contribution amounts based on reason.
Robert, Aaron?
This is just a crappy situation to be in, but the goal, what it's going to do for the town, I think is just going to be tremendous. If we can move forward, I suggest we do, and taking staff's guidance to try to mitigate the risk. I say we move forward with it, get as much information as we can. We can back out. I'd hate to see that happen too, but yeah, I'm agreeing with Steve here.
Yeah, I also agree. I mean, it's a tough situation to be in, but I think we need to have as much information as possible to make a good decision on this. It also gives us time too to see how much impact this whole thing's going to have on us for the second half of the year. So hopefully we'll have more information by then, or at least a better idea.
Well, I certainly agree. I mean, I look at this, we've got Church of the Latter-day Saints, they're moving forward. I was told today that they may be coming to the Plan Commission in June. So they are moving full speed ahead, and we have to be cognizant of that because they're going to need the infrastructure in place. I also like the two-tier approach. It's kind of like when we do construction loans at the bank, we have the borrower put their money up front. And that's kind of what we're doing here is we're putting our money up front, which will keep our cost on the back end down, which when you look at, and well, way at the very beginning where Greg was showing the different years that we're going to put money out, we've got 15 million in 2020. That'll end up going out to 2021.
Mhm.
So I think that'll be a benefit to us as well. So Ryan, I think you've heard from everybody. Do you understand what the marching orders are?
Yep, I will continue moving forward.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to move to the edit cash flow on page 53? So this is the, and we discussed this quite a bit on our meetings, where, for instance, here in the edit cash flow, it was getting below our target minimum fund balance, specifically even in 2020. So we debated whether we wanted to ask, put in or recommend to you certain cuts in projects, but we did not take that tack. We wanted to show you, including all of the projects, what it would mean. But right now, what we're saying is in 2021, that would be too low of a ending cash balance for us to proceed. And 2022 would even be worse. So it doesn't give us much leg room. So at this point in time, these include it, but we are recommending either a switching of the years or delaying some projects.
Well, we have to pay our bond debt service, so that number has to stay, obviously.
Correct. Ryan, we talked about what's in capital outlay over and above what is shown as the projects. And do you want to speak to that just a moment?
Yeah, just maybe real quickly. So if you guys look at the capital outlays line, the biggest expenditure out of there is 246,074. You kind of see it in 21, 22, 23, 24. And that's actually money that we put towards our paving. There was some extra money, I think it was around $150,000 that was in fiscal year 2020 that was for a capital improvement project. We assumed that would not be a reoccurring expense. And so that's why you kind of see that line go. That is something, if we don't have a project this year, or if we can avoid spending it, that's an option for us, which would obviously help our cash flow in the out years. And then I think the other two things I'll point out is we had the Gateway Ronald Reagan Parkway Project 19. We could probably split that up, or we could push that project out. That's 300,000. So again, that's kind of a driver down of our fund balance in 21. And then the one that's really bad is the $1.5 million in 2024 for the Raceway Road and 100 North project, the roundabout. The MPO did not award projects for 2024. That was our match to the federal aid project. So there's potential that could either move out a year, or that we may just have to find another place to pay for that. My suggestion would be is hopefully by then, maybe Avon Landing is actually has a couple buildings up and is generating some revenue, and maybe we can find a way for the Ronald Reagan Parkway EDA TIF district to maybe pay for that project in the future, because that project would benefit that area. So again, a couple options that while it looks really bad, there's a couple of options that we could do that would kind of reduce some of the stress on the edit. But I still think overall the council needs to be careful here because we are starting to stretch edit a little thin.
So
When
you're,
If and when we do the gateway around Reagan, or I'm sorry, the roundabout at 100 North and Raceway, would we get any participation from Marion County on that?
Less than we're getting on from Hendricks County on 100 South, Greg.
oh, that hurts.
No, they won't help, Greg.
Okay.
Yeah. Even though they're our border, that's a good question, but yeah, we're responsible for it because everything to the east, we're responsible for, right, Ryan?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, your eastern county boundary is your responsibility. I already talked to them about contributing and they already told me no, but they did say they would allow us, they would give us approval to do the project and they would give us approval to buy the right of way. So,
Can we get any federal grant for that since it's kind of a main corridor?
yeah, that's actually, we applied for a federal grant. So it's actually about a $3.5 million project.
Okay.
And so the 1.5 million is assuming that's just our match and that we're able to get federal funds. So that's our hope. And if we don't get federal funds, that project made us have to get pushed out because we can't afford a $3.5 million project. So
Well, we can't even afford the 1.5,
correct, yes.
what it's showing us.
Yep, you're correct. Yep.
Well,
Lots of good news.
better and better.
What's next, Ryan?
Tom, do you want to move to food and beverage?
Okay. What page?
Page 56.
That one's probably getting ready to go through the roof.
Yeah.
You mean the roof is going to cave in? Is that what you mean to say?
No, I think if I can help it, we're going to contribute to that a lot.
I've been doing my best to contribute.
So, and in the sustainability, you'll see where we did cut revenues, and we have cut revenues here, but good job, Julie, and keep it up. And I went to Charbono's the other day, got carry out, so for the entire staff. So here again, though, with the reduction in revenue, and we've got a lot we're trying to take out of it. And in this case, we're probably again trying to do too much given some of the depletion in revenue that has occurred. So any questions on some specific projects?
Ryan, is the erosion control, is that the part that's down by Washington Township Park, or is that the part that we just finished doing?
No, the erosion control on White Lake Creek on County Road 625 is our partnership with the Army Corps of Engineers to protect County Road 625 East from falling in the creek by the Haunted Bridge.
Right, so that's the one that's down by the Washington Township Park.
Yes, that's correct.
And is the one north, the project where we just corrected our stream bank, that's paid for already, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yep, it's all paid for and done.
Personal services, what's the 410,000? What all gets lumped into that one?
That's all of our staff. So that's our maintenance staff, our programming staff, all of our parks employees, insurance, benefits, all that stuff.
If you're wanting to know past history of revenue, 2019 was 1.27 million. 2018 was 1.34 million. 2017 was 1.1 million.
It's gonna be a slim year.
Yeah.
Ryan, do you want to, what's in the capital outlays line, the no projects in CIP. What is in there? Can you explain that?
Yeah, there are a couple of projects that we were going to do. Some of them are smaller things, but we did have in there, for example, we were going to pave the parking lot in front of the town hall. So again, that may just be something we'd like to do it, but it just may need to wait a year. There were a couple other projects like that. I think some of the there were some improvements in the back of the park that we talked about doing. And so we may have to wait on doing some of those as well. The big one that we did push, and I know I've shared this with all of you already, was the bond debt service and doing the park bond. We've pushed that out a couple of years, and we've suggested we not do that till 2022. And so that was actually a big reduction in impact to the food and beverage already. So we just want to make you guys aware of that. I think I've communicated that to all of you already too. And there are a couple of other projects in that 410,000 in capital outlays that we could probably not do this year as well if we decide we want to try to reduce that and help keep our fund balance a little healthier.
I mean, it looks like to keep at our recommended balance, we're going to have to completely take away all the capital outlays, or we're going to have to cut out at least the the park improvements on project number 9. I mean, we've got to make that up. If we want to fund balance of 750, we've got to get rid of almost $400,000 off this.
I have a question for Greg Garatos. Would it, because I feel like we're kind of spinning our wheels right now because we have no idea what's going to occur in the future. Would it be beneficial for each department head to do almost a monthly update on these, basically, and give us their recommendations of, or maybe it's the next quarter, how this looks and the options that we have at that point? Because I feel we can sit here all night and we're going to hear the same theme. It's doom and gloom, and we really just don't know. And what I think would be more beneficial, I mean, we have the document, and I'm sure it's on our website for the public to see. What I feel like would be more beneficial is kind of like a plan of recommendations moving forward for different periods of time.
So Aaron, that's an excellent question. I guess what we've done in other places, and again, you know, as a financial analyst, I don't make the decisions on these, but when we run the numbers, what we are seeing is, yes, if we can get help from the department heads on the expense line, and it's not any too early that we could start looking at 2021. And you're going to see that when we go to the sustainability. On the revenue side, with what Julie's giving us and everything like that, we've got a real good handle on, I think, where we're at today. And as I've told the county and Hancock County and some of the major counties I work for, we're going to be updating this almost monthly, especially the sustainability. Because yes, we specifically, Dawn said we got to cut 400,000. That's pretty much what we cut out of the estimated revenue, was about 400,000. And so if that were to come back as strong as Julie, if Julie spends that much money and we're back in the black and above and at the recommended balance. So, you know, it's the document's as good as the day we get it. But we've got a computer model that we'll be updating for the council, so to keep you updated. And that's in today's time. Number one, you don't want to look 1 year, you want to look 3 years. And number two, we got to be ready to be able to move on a moment's notice.
So
I guess I feel like that's what I wanted to know, because I think updating and having a plan, or at least recommendations from everybody for now on a monthly basis, would be helpful. We're a month and a half away from starting our budget process for next year. And so it sounds like you feel very confident about that information that we have for next year, but it's after that that we're still unsure about.
Well, that's very much so, Aaron, because what we're seeing is, number one, the state of Indiana is saying that the real income tax impact may not be till 2022. We've put part of the income tax impact in 2021 when we get to the sustainability, and 2022. We're worried about a little bit of a perfect storm establishing where we would have decreasing AVs in 2022 and decreasing income taxes in 2022. I was on one of the newspapers today. I spoke over a half an hour, and we've also proposed to the state of Indiana a 3-year income stabilization plan, never thought of before in the state of Indiana. And we actually put it together, and it's actually being discussed by a couple representatives and a senator right now. If something like that gets put together, then this ball game changes in 2 seconds. So there is a lot of data that we're going through. Greenfield Reporter said, "Where'd you get the multipliers?" Believe me, I'm dealing with all of these on a daily basis, everything. We even thought, Ryan and I and Tom had some suggestions, and we were going to eliminate some items and get this into balance, but we didn't think it was really, as your fiscal analyst, it's not my job to cut your projects, because that may be a project you really want to do. So we decided not to do that, right, Tom?
Yeah, I think
And show you where we are, but we had a lot of suggested changes.
I guess building on what Aaron said, I think, and Ryan helped me out here. I think Ryan could create a list of projects and the timelines for those projects that we could present to you, and you guys could decide if we should hold off on them. I think, Ryan, how long would it take for you to get that together?
I don't think it would take very long. I think we've already worked through some suggestions that I'd be willing to make, but like Greg said, if you guys really felt strongly that if we only did one project and you wanted to pave the parking lot, I didn't want to cut paving the parking lot if that was something you guys felt strongly about. So I'm happy. I think Aaron's suggestion is a good one. I'm happy to put together recommendations of what to do and not do. But I'd still like you guys to look at that and to say, yes, that's okay, before we actually start cutting them.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was saying. I mean, I know the information comes from Greg and his people, but I think this is something so crucial that we're going to have to monitor it regularly. And I think it's going to change probably multiple times and maybe go back and forth. But much like we do our annual budget process, which I think we're all very happy with, because you are the ones who deal with these things on the regular basis, you at least come up with the recommendations of what you believe will be best and the options, and we can still look over those. But I feel like right now we're just kind of sitting here looking and saying, hey, everything's bleak and bad, but in a month and a half, 2 months, it could all change. So it's kind of tough to really get a good outlook on things now, and we have no idea how that'll be different here fairly soon.
Well, and I think, paving the town parking lot is, at least for me, much further down the list than getting 100 South financed. So
That's a good way to weigh it. I like that. Yeah, and you know what? I mean, seriously, I think it is good to have the little spreadsheet, and we can have a weighted average among everybody and look to see, what are the top projects. That way staff knows what's going on. So yeah, let's proceed with that. That's a great idea.
Robert and Greg, you guys okay with that too? We have Ryan get you guys a list. You guys can look at it.
Great idea. I mean, I think, some of these projects are ranked. Some of them have already been completed. We just need to clean that up. And if it was ranked high, it may not be as high as it used to be. So it makes sense.
Okay. We can do that.
So Tom, if we want to go through a couple of the other cash flows, then we'll move on to the sustainability. The
Okay.
next one was the road infrastructure fund. page 59, and we're fine. And that's not one of those dedicated, that's a dedicated fund. And what we do is we really kind of program it with what we believe needs to be done in the year. And Ryan, do you know off the top of your head what the 240 is?
The 240 is finishing up the County Road 200 North project. It's our final expenditures to complete 200 North.
That's it. Thank you. The next one is Fund 454, Recreation Impact, or the RIF Fund. And here again, now in this one, I have no concern with the number going to 90,000. We don't have a minimum fund balance because this is a dedicated fund. It does not provide any bond payments or anything like that. That could go to zero as far as I'm concerned. But we want to keep the fund, $100,000 is a nice one. But if any of those projects, if we decided not to do it, or if we moved it from one year to the next, it really wouldn't be of concern from a financial end, Ryan. It may be from an end from your end.
Ryan, there's been discussion, certainly from the residents up there at the north end of the town hall park, where you want to do the shelter and restroom project. And I thought I've seen something where it's been indicated that that may not happen this year. So there's $300,000 that will move out.
Yeah, and that the shelter and restroom may be the one project, the park project maybe we do want to do this year. I think I indicated to the neighborhood that we weren't going to put it in the mound, which was the location that we showed them, but I did tell them there was potential for us to maybe still do the shelter and restroom. That was the number one thing that we got back from our survey, was that people wanted a restroom on the north end of the park. The playground, I think, is definitely one that can probably wait. And again, even the 2020 Trail and Sidewalk project, that's something we haven't started yet. So I expect, those expenses could get pushed out. The Light and Life Church we're going to close on. So I certainly, and it may not even be that much, Greg. So we'll see.
Okay.
The trail and sidewalk connections, those are definitely I know it's a big chunk, but man, that's one where the residents get a lot of value for it. So that's a good one to kind of be a sacred cow in my mind.
And Ryan, that's the current bid, right? The 564. So that one is already obligated, correct?
Yeah, the 564 is actually an awarded project. That's the one that Morphe, we awarded it actually last year. And so they're actually getting ready to start construction. We thought they were going to start last week. So the 564 is the 2020 Trail and Sidewalk one would be to start a design of a new section. And so that's one, even if we start it this year, we're not going to go that fast that we're going to incur $200,000 worth of expense this year.
The final one then, Tom, is the stormwater. And that's one where we're reviewing the 2022 projects because we cannot do to that level. But at this point in time, it's a matter of either delaying or basically moving some of the capital outlays. So any questions on what we kind of consider the draft one to the council? And again, the philosophy was, if we can identify the revenue cuts, get them in here, and then put all the projects that we listed on front and get it to council, and then say, okay, how we want to proceed. And I think you've given us guidance on how to proceed with recommendations back to you. But we chose to put them all in at first.
So at the bottom of the stormwater fund, you've got $250,000, Brian, to check on revenue. Is that what you're wanting our fund balance to not ever go below, or what's that $250,000 that he's
No,
checking.
that was, Ryan, that was additional revenue that I thought maybe you had on, still on hand from some of the county legal drains, I thought. But
That's another sore subject too. Oh. Greg, what are you doing next meeting?
sir, remember, I'm the analyst. I'm only the analyst. I'm not the decision maker.
That's fine. I'm just kidding you.
No problem. Thanks. Did we, so we'll check on that note, but I believe that's one we were double checking, like I said, on the estimated revenue. Ryan, if that was, we went ahead and kept it lower, and I don't think it's grown, correct?
Yeah, I kind of remember us talking about that, and I don't recall exactly what it was.
So Don, great question. We'll follow up on that.
Thank you.
Tom, would you like to go to the sustainability?
Yeah, let's see if I can pull it off.
So our goal in the sustainability was, and if you go to the assumptions page first, we worked a lot with Tom on the various assumptions that we put in, and the way you'll be coming up to it here in a few more pages. Tom, keep going. After all the recommendations and all of that,
It's not the
here it is.
sustainability revenue and spending plan. Is that the one?
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Okay.
that's it.
Yes.
Okay.
So-
I've got it.
Yeah, in your
Sustainability revenue and spending plan. So what is different on this one than ever before is we've gone in and cut and adjusted the 2020 revenues. So usually we leave those at the budgeted numbers, but as you can, we have so much information and so many things going on that we went ahead and made some decreases in round one. One of our concerns is, like I said, is as more information is developing on the income tax, we actually now a lot of times are using 15 and 15% and rather than 10 and 10. So, and that would be as of real recent. You see what we've done to food and beverage. Unfortunately, MVH and LRS also a significant decrease. That's just due to the volume. And Steve, I don't know what you've seen from the state level, but there is, and here's a way that this may change on a dime, is that they are really discussing the going forward with the community crossing grants, and the fact that a lot of municipalities around the state are going to have problems meeting their payroll and meeting the restricted and non-restricted fund, let alone having money for matching grants. So there is a possibility and a heavy discussion about that may be either delayed or eliminated or minimized, and that some of that revenue would turn back into MVH and LRS. That would be a huge help for the town of Avon, and because Ryan and I are struggling on those budgets going forward. Tom, if you want to move to the general fund, what we've tried to do in each of these funds is we've tried to kind of preliminarily set a number for 2021. And again, I can't impress upon enough that this document has served us well in the past. It's probably going to be it's going to be the document you have to have for as a growing municipality going forward, because you're going to have to be able to show the rating agency and anyone else where you're projecting your income, your net income is going to be, your ending balance. Here, I guess I can say that it's not all gloom and doom, that if we control our expenses, and because we've built up our balances over the last several years, and actually many years, that we're actually projecting at this point in time that we're doing well in the general fund. Well is, some people are going down $1 million a year. So, I really like this. I think, Tom, we wanted to speak that we kept some of the police officers in. You know, if income tax gets, you know, that's something we want to keep reviewing new ones. I think what we want to do is say, as far as new hires for 2021, we're really going to have to get far down the road of 2020 before we can say that's a safe bet. But we've got it employed on page 8 of this document, and we actually bolded and put it out. And so we've heard the town council loud and clear, and we're trying, but at this point in time, we really want to get through the 2020 budget, see what else, as Steve said, you know, what's changing, or Aaron said, what's changing on a daily basis before we would want that to occur.
So with that being said, we had 5 officers in our 2020 budget, so we're still okay to hire those. But you're just not sure if we can hire additional for 2021?
I'm sorry, for some reason, my note said 4 officers.
Well, we were already, I think, weren't we already down 1?
Oh, then that would be 5, yes.
Okay.
And Dawn, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
Is it does appear like it's, unless we get other news, you know, that we don't know about at this point in time, feels like that we've got a good budget for 2020. You know, our fund balance looks strong. If we spend 100% of our budget almost, we may go down some, but you know, we're not expecting that. That's where the point of one of the council member was, if the department heads can help us and got some suggested cuts for 2020, it only pays dividends in the future.
So I guess a question, when we had our last hiring round for the police, I think they went through that list, and then we were talking about whether or not they should open up the next hiring process. And all of that kind of got pushed and put on hold because of COVID. So I guess I'm asking the other council members, do you think we should move forward with authorizing, you know, the next hiring session to fill the vacancies that we didn't get filled on the previous round?
I believe there's only one, is that right, chiefs? And they were kind of holding off on that for now anyway, just to see how things are going.
That
That's
is
correct.
correct. We had 1 vacancy for a position we weren't able to fill due to the list being exhausted.
Mhm. So if we're going to keep up with our 2020 plan to bring on the total of 5 officers, should we start that next round? I mean, do you feel that this is the time to do it, since we're hearing from Greg that, you know, we've got, you know, that was already planned and we were already budgeted for that additional officer? Because it's sounding like we may or may not be able to hire again next year.
I think we also don't want to get into the point to where we have to draw back. So I think I would like to proceed with it, but maybe give it another month or 2 just to get more information and feel like we're comfortable enough that that won't be the case next year. Because that's the last thing that I would want to do.
Mhm.
John, with the school putting together their own police force, we've had a couple of resource officers there that would become available. Have we really understood what the impact, either positive or negatively, has been or will be?
Well, I think once that the school police department's up and running, it will be a very positive thing. It will certainly help having them back in our rotation. However, with the COVID situation, it has substantially hindered the school process as well. So they're kind of behind. So we anticipate that our officers are going to be helping with the school this next school year in the event that school resumes and attendance resumes at the school as normal until the school police department has everything up and running.
So are they opening back up their search then and their hiring process? Are they going to do that as soon as the COVID lift?
They are actually actively doing that right now as we speak. They have some interviews lined up next week for some of their final candidates, and they plan on having some of those officers selected maybe as early as June. The problem you have is the same thing that we run into from time to time is you can't always guarantee that you get an academy certified individual. So even if they were able to hire 4 individuals in June, they may or may not have the academy certification, and that would require them to attend a 16-week academy, which has also been affected by the COVID-19. So it's been pushed back as well. So our officer that was in the academy is due to resume his training next month and hopefully complete that. It pushed back the class after his, which effectively pushed back the August class, which our new officers were supposed to attend. So you can see the domino effect here is pushing everything back ultimately to sometime in 2021, I would say, before the school has their department fully operational and up and running.
Okay.
Sean,
One thing to go ahead, sorry.
the question I have, Sean, is you've exhausted your list of potential candidates, correct?
Mhm.
Yes, we have.
So don't you need to re-advertise and go through that process again? And then once you do that, usually how long are those names good for? I mean, if we get that list in hand, but we don't actively go out and maybe look to hire somebody for another 3 or 4 months, how long does it take for that list to go stale?
According to the state law, that list can be in service for no longer than 2 years. So we've never really have a problem with the list being good long enough due to the calendar. What we usually have a problem with is we exhaust the list prior to that 2-year mark, and then we have to start another process just because of candidates that aren't qualified well enough to be tendered a conditional offer of employment.
And that's what I was getting at. Like, that's what I was trying to say was, should we start that process? But because it would take a while to gather the information. So by the time we get candidates and you start the elimination process or vetting process, if you will, then we may know whether or not where we stand with our budget. So I was just trying to keep us moving forward in case we're able to fund more. But Aaron, maybe I misspoke on it. I don't know. Do you?
Well, I think they're going to have quite a bit of applicants this round because of the economy. But number 2, the only thing that I was saying was that I wanted to make sure that we were going to be able to hire someone before we spent the money to do the process, and that we were going to be able to retain them too, because the last thing we want to do is find out that we're coming up short on our funds and then end up having to do a layoff. So whatever they think is best, I'll support. But I think they'll probably get a record amount of people applying this round. And I know they've also had issues in the past where people have been sitting on the list very high, are good candidates and accepted jobs elsewhere. So that may not be the case this round as well.
I know we talk about collaboration a lot, and so since the school corporation is also needing to go through the process to get their officers, is that an expense that we can share perhaps and use the same list in any way?
No, we're bound by the rules of the statutory merit law, and the school is not. So their hiring qualifications and process is a little bit different, and ours is a little more strict. So it would be pretty much nearly impossible for us to do that.
Okay.
I will comment on something you mentioned previously about the hiring process and the time, as far as I think Aaron mentioned, maybe waiting a little bit till we have more data and information before we do it. That's probably the best idea, just because even if we were to say we wanted to start a hiring process tomorrow, we really could not do that because of the isolation restrictions that are in place right now, because you're talking about 100 or 200 people being in the same place in close proximity, taking written tests and doing physical agility tests and things of that nature. So we're a little ways out before we can actually pull the trigger on the hiring process anyway. So I think we'll have some time to reevaluate that information. Maybe in the next couple meetings, we'll have more data that can show that we're ready to do that or not.
Thank you.
Just want to keep you moving forward.
We appreciate it. We're ready.
So Tom wanted me to just hit some of the highlight funds hereafter, and the MVH, Tom, on page 11 this is the one that's taking the direct hit this year. And as you can see, our revenues, we've got 1.2 million, 1.3 million roughly. Our budget was set at 1.7 million. Ryan and I knew we would have a little spend down, but now that we've projected the lower revenues, we were not projecting that much of a hit. So MVH is really one that's it's going to hurt. And that can be seen in the revenue pages and things like that. Now, Don, your question and why I am saying very cautiously, and Aaron, you're getting department heads to help us, is if the NVH continued on this trend, we may have to look at reallocating some income tax dollars. Like Greg, I think you'd remember we've discussed that, and we've done that many different times in the past. We take some of our income or our property tax dollars and put them in the general fund, or then we move them 1 year to maybe the MVH fund to help shore it up. That may be coming in the future, but you can see the impact going that we're projecting there. This is isolated from page 13, which is the restricted fund. So recall that we have to put still 50% of our revenue. And Julie, I talked to other clerk treasurers and they hadn't gotten their MVH check for May yet, but that's the one that's supposed to be down 50%. I think LTAP or someone gave a little bit, or the advice was distorted or taken wrong. They were saying it was going to be down 50% the rest of the year. I guess we believe that interpretation was incorrect. That the gas tax hopefully will be responding directly to how full 36 is with cars in the future here. Some of the other funds, LRS will take a similar hit, but that's a restricted fund. That may be something, Ryan, that we'll be looking at in the future about taking a little pressure off of MVH and putting a little more on LRS because we have a balance there. But that's one of those things that Ryan and I kind of arm wrestle every time we do a budget. I won't go through the TIF, the other funds, CCD fund, page 21, Tom. That one is a strong fund. We don't try and spend it all down. And so we have a good balance. I believe you did reauthorize the maximum rate, which we try and keep it at for the CCD, right, Tom? Earlier this year. And that's very, very important because what I'm seeing, I don't know if everybody else saw it, but my Hendricks County assessed value went up 8%. We're seeing very, very strong increases in AV, and we want to be able to capture our CUME fund on that. So, in Avon, Indiana, I'm assuming you're also seeing as strong of increases in AV. And again, we may have to be worried about decreases in AV come 2022. The rest of the funds pretty much can speak for themselves. The food and beverage, we won't go over that in detail, but all those things you might have asked about, some of the details, they are in the sustainability, the edit. We went over that and stuff like that. recall that the sustainability then serves many, many purposes. It serves the purpose of setting us up for 2021, 2022, 2023, giving us guidance on what we can tell council we may or may not be able to do. It serves the constituents that they can go in and look at when it's online, all the past expenses and where we are. We also use it, during the rating process. It's the number one document that the rating agency is asking for now, is where do you believe your large, I mean, if we added this all up, I don't know, Tom, maybe it would be a $15 million business, but where this $15 million business or more is going to go in the future. So, the rest of the sustainability has all the other stuff, but since we've gone now almost an hour and a half, I won't go through page by page. So any follow-up questions at this point?
Only question I have, Greg, is on some of these funds, you had recommended a target minimum fund balance. What would your target minimum fund balance be in the general fund?
Let's see if we have that, Tom. I thought maybe we even had put that, and it is the minimum target balance by the rating agency standard is 25% of revenue. Notice I said revenue, and so that would be because as revenues changes, they expect your minimum fund balance to go up. Yeah, we did have it, and so at 25% on page 1, it shows approximately $1.5 million.
I got it. Thank you.
Yeah, and if we go for Greg, when we go for the TIF rating, we would, and I think Tom, I can't recall, have we memorialized that in a resolution?
For TIF?
No, our minimum target balance by fund.
Not by fund. I think we did a resolution for the redevelopment commission at one point.
Okay.
Not for each fund.
There's several documents before we go to the rating agency. One is a debt management policy. One is a cash management policy that is for investments and what Julie's doing with investments. And also another one is a minimum target balance. If we can actually pass those resolutions and those documents and show our plan, that's kind of one of those that they tick off and give management higher reward points for. Right now, in today's world, your credit rating is so important as we go forward. We want to score as many points as we can. So we'll be recommending those documents to the town manager and work with him on trying to bring them to the town council.
Any other questions for Mr. Garatos from anybody? Well, Greg, we thank you for your time and for your insight. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And I thought maybe I'll stay around for the Avon Landing, which I believe is up next. And then if you don't mind, I'll probably fix my dinner.
There you go. Well, perfect segue. Next thing on the agenda is ordinance, the final reading of ordinance 2020-05, the bond ordinance for Avon Landing. Mr. Klein or Mr. Garatos, who's going to talk about this?
I think Ryan's going to.
Yep, I'll talk about it. So as you guys, we talked about this a little bit at the last council meeting. You guys introduced this at the last meeting. This is kind of the last step for you guys to move forward with the bond. The Economic Development Commission has recommended that you pass this ordinance. This authorizes the bond for Avon Landing. And so you will note there were a couple of changes since last time. So the first document in your OneNote is the clean version. And then the second version of it is the red line version. There are very minor changes, but this did have to go back and forth between our bond counsel and Tom Dickey's bond counsel. So there were a few minor modifications. I don't think any of them substantially changed anything from the council's perspective. So I think that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Cannon? Mr. Taylor, do you have any feedback, any comments?
I would just make comments. This ordinance authorizes the issuance of the bond. And as I mentioned last time, it does require, it does allow you to make certain findings that are necessary. And they really are that this will help economic development and create jobs. And then the second one is that it won't have an adverse effect in terms of competition with any other existing businesses. And because this really comes through your redevelopment authority, that's kind of a different thing. We haven't seen that before, but that's what that is. And so those findings are really important. And then the only thing I'd mention is the ordinance authorizes the president of the council and the clerk treasurer to sign any documents. It does also authorize them to make modifications to the bond that need to be made. And what happens is that sometimes there are last minute minor modifications that need to be made, technical corrections. And this authorizes the officers to take care of that. They are really non-substantial in nature generally, if any. And the ordinance actually says that although they can do that, they don't have the power to change the maximum interest rate, the amount of the bond, or any of the important terms of the ordinance. So I'd be happy to answer any questions as well, but that's the way this bond ordinance is a little different from bond ordinances you may have seen before.
Questions for Mr. Taylor or for Mr. Cannon?
So I know we spoke early on, I think I'll call it round one of this with the Brownsburg superintendent and those folks, and everyone was okay with it from then. And I haven't heard, I don't know if anyone else has heard anything different since then from Brownsburg.
No, actually that discussion was based on apartments being on the east side of Ronald Reagan. And we don't know if that'll be apartments or not right now.
Okay, thank you.
Also, the report was shared with the Brownsburg town manager, and he didn't have any questions either.
My only other question, Dan, was last meeting, I think we gave you and Ryan the latitude to negotiate a couple of different points. It's not part of this document, but it was part of another agreement. Where are we in terms of those negotiations?
We think we have all the terms worked out. Heather, James, the bond counsel, Greg Garitas, part of our team, of course, worked really hard with the Avon Landing counterparts, I'll call them, financial advisors, bond attorneys, and we were able to work through those. Ryan, we had a couple teleconferences, and we were able to work those to the satisfaction of Ryan and to Heather on the bond technical parts and to Greg on the financial side. And Ryan and I spoke earlier today, and we confirmed that we believe we have all those terms and concerns that we had worked out to the satisfaction of to your team of people who were fortunate that Greg and Heather and Ryan, who knows the project well, kind of take care of each little piece of that. And again, appreciate Avon Landing working with us through that, but thought the team did a good job of protecting the town's interest. But we're good to go on all those now, Greg, as far as for concern.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Just one other comment, Greg, if I may. Remember on this bond issue, for maybe some of the newer council people, this bond issue is the town of Avon is not at risk on it. In the event tomorrow or 2 years from now, nothing develops, we do not have to put this back on the burden of the taxpayers, or does it come from our pre-existing TIF district? So that's important, and that was our directive from the beginning.
Thank you, Greg. If there are no other questions, we need a motion then from somebody, please.
I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance 2020-05 as written on the red line copy.
We have a motion by Dawn. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Robert. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Julie, you're muted.
Greg Susan,
4,
Robert Pope,
4.
Don Loudon,
Or
Aaron Teveba,
Four.
Steve Eisenbarth.
4.
thank you. Next item on the agenda is Resolution 2020-10, reopening public facilities. Mr. Klein?
Yes, this resolution is to reopen our public facilities. The 2 dates have been left blank for returning to work and opening town hall. The resolution does say that the town court would open May 18th, at least the lobby, as requested by Judge Eglin. And then it also explains that playgrounds and the outdoor restrooms would open as part of stage 3, as part of the governor's plan. The surrounding communities, just give some data when they're opening so you can give us guidance. The county will be opening, they've returned to work and they're opening their building to the public on May 18th. Danville has returned to work and they're opening to the public on May 18th. Plainfield is starting to return to work, some employees on May 18th. May 24th week, town hall will be open by appointment only, and they will open on June 14th to the public. At-risk employees for Plainfield stay home till June 8th. Brownsburg is returning to work over the next few weeks, and they may open to the public on either June 14th or possibly August. In your packet, you do have the governor's back on track plan, each stage. We are in stage 2 right now that for government offices says limited public access, and that goes to May 23rd. And then based on our indications from the governor, we're moving into stage 3, which will be May 24th. That would be limited public access for government offices. And then stage 4, June 14th is when there is no limited access to government offices. With that said, the council has the jurisdiction and authority to open up at different time as provided by the governor.
Comments for council? Thoughts, ideas?
I would say that I'm in favor of going ahead and getting us back in the town offices on Monday. But I do think that we shouldn't necessarily open to public until maybe, I think we should take the governor's lead on that and say, maybe we review it every 2 weeks. So at this point, I would say that we wouldn't, we would come back and see whether or not we wanted to open at the end of May, or if we wanted to open at June 14th at a later, on May 31st, see if we want to open on June 14th. But to discuss it, let's take in the data. Let's see what the county cases are doing in that amount of time. But I think since we have less than 10 people on each side of the building and everyone has their own workspace or office, with the exception of Jasmine and Suzanne. And I think, Tom, you and I talked that maybe Jasmine could even be moved into the one conference room there on your side of the building, and Suzanne's getting the screen shield and things like that for public coming in. And I think though, if we're still closed to the public, then it's going to be by appointment only, and so she's going to have limited exposure even out there in her regular station. So I just think as everyone's out and moving about, conceivably, another point would be, residents seeing us out and about in restaurants and retail locations and things like that. It's going to be even more difficult to say, well, they can be out there, but they can't be in our town offices, even close to the public. So I'm kind of for getting us back to work and back into the routine. And I don't see how it's an added risk to anyone's health, except perhaps the people that fall in that high risk group automatically. And for those, I would say that we continue to follow our pandemic policy on that for now, and maybe consider a deadline on the pandemic policy at some point. And Dan, I guess we'd look to you for guidance on that, on how we bring that to a closure, the pandemic policy. That's my comment.
Comments?
So I would recommend a hybrid, or not really a hybrid, but splitting between stage 3 and 4. I would recommend continuing doing what we're doing until the end of this month. And then making a decision for the earliest response would be the 1st of June. And then going from there to see when we would open to the public, possibly the June 14th date. Because I think we've got it, what we have, we've learned now that we can do things in the way that we're doing it. It's working. And the last thing I would want to do is backtrack like we saw this week in some places. They just got a little too antsy to get things back to normal and they had to do that. So rather than do that, I would rather err on the side of safety and have us all plan to be back early June, 1st of the month or after, and then kind of take it from there when we can open to the public.
I kind of go in the same direction that you're describing there, Aaron, is that I think it's better to kind of put it out a little bit to June, and then for the purpose of, you know, I'm looking at all the other ones that are starting to show signs of coming back with the virus, and this thing's darn deadly, so I don't want to mess with it. I want to give it a little more time.
Robert?
Yeah, I actually really liked what Aaron had to say. So I don't think we need to jump back into this too quickly. I don't think our productivity has gone down with who we have working at home. I think the negative to keeping employees working from home is just the look to the public. So if we can do a better job of communicating everything that we are continuing to do and make sure that the public can see that daily, weekly basis, I think that really takes the stab out of that. I'm very much concerned that if we jump back on the bandwagon, open this back up, kind of try to bring things back to normal too soon, we're going to be a hot spot soon after. I'll repeat what Aaron said. I'd rather err on the side of safety here.
Well, we also have to remember that one of our schools was kind of the first case in the state and it started here. So the thing that I would hate for it to do would be not only have that, but then be the poster child of we got back too soon and then we had a round 2 or something to that degree.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like both sides of it. I mean, I certainly supported what Dawn said, but I also don't want to be the first one out there and we go backwards, we regress. So maybe the thought is at our May 28th meeting, we have another conversation, and I think it'll all really kind of fall into what Aaron kind of initiated the conversation with. June 4th might be that targeted date for employees to come back. I think in the interim, from a supply standpoint, Tom, I don't know if we have all of our supplies, if you've got the germ shields or anything like that. And I think too, we do have a couple of at-risk or potential at-risk employees that I don't want to jeopardize their health or certainly be responsible for that. So if everybody's on board, we should just table this until the next meeting, which would be the 28th.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree.
Robert?
Sounds good.
Dawn?
Okay.
So
So
the only thing would be to clarify that I think, and Dan, maybe you need to help me here on the court issue with opening May 18th. Can we just do that based on his request because they're separate than us and open up the lobby when the office hours are?
Well, isn't the court, though, is being mandated, the way I understand it, by the Supreme Court and not from the state of Indiana itself? But certainly, Dan. give us some guidance on that.
Yeah, the Indiana Supreme Court actually can direct the town court when they are open and how they will operate, and changes a little bit, but the judge, what I have told Tom is, look, the judge is going to have to follow whatever directive he gets from the Indiana Supreme Court. We're obligated to house them. If he needs the doors open, we're going to have to open them. If he is going to conduct court, we're going to have to let him. Today, the Indiana Supreme Court issued 2 new orders about allowing remote court and also allowing courts to order people to wear masks who are in the courtroom. So I think that what I would do is just accommodate the court, whatever rule the court adopts locally, and whatever they need us to do. I think our obligation is to accommodate them. But I also think that may change in the next week.
Well, and I think prior to this meeting, Chief Stoops and myself and Tom spoke about if we need to keep it open for the court, that's fine. But when they're not open, the police station is closed, and the chief, as well as the assistant and Deputy Chief Marguson and Nugent, both have access to it. So I think we'll be able to honor the request of Judge Eglin and the Supreme Court, but when they're not open, that facility will still be closed.
And I might also say, with regard to the return issue, I want to applaud your caution and seriousness. But just today, we learned some new information that should make us a little more cautious, and that is the Fairbanks, the Indiana University Fairbanks first released their first data on their study, and the big surprising piece of data is that we didn't have much testing before, but now the testing is more widespread. So we have more positive cases now than we used to, because we're testing a lot more. But the unusual thing was that what they have found is that the number of people who tested positive in this expanded testing who are asymptomatic made up a much larger pool of the total positive tests than they would have ever imagined. They were estimating like 10% of people might be asymptomatic, but the data released today said 44% of the people who tested positive had no symptoms at all. And the reason that concerns should concern all employers, and certainly concerns the public health officials, is that when we talk to employees and we say, hey, we don't want you to come back if you're sick, or if you have a fever, or you have been with someone who has been exposed, then if they answer all those questions right, we kind of think it's okay to let them in the building. And so what we're learning, at least for the data through May 1st, is that if we did that 44% of the people who say they feel absolutely fine might have been positive, and we'd be circulating them around our buildings. The assumption was that number was so low it was almost not worth worrying about. So I'll let people smarter than me figure out what that means. But that is something that just kind of sent some shockwaves through the public emergency people today. In my meeting, the doctors all said, look, that number is much higher than we thought. And it's concerning, because that really means that until people are tested, we don't know who might have it, because we can't just rely upon symptoms. So as we begin to sort out all this, I think your cautious approach is really a smart one. And I wish we knew more. I just think we learned something. We're learning as we go. So thanks.
When Greg, I'm going to bring up, when you and I met with at the council chambers on Thursday, the town doors were unlocked. I had called the person we were meeting to tell him to call me to let me know when he was outside, but he walked in. So, I mean, that might be something to.
Okay.
Well, we need to turn our lock, Tom.
Was there, Don or Greg, was there anyone else in the building or anything?
I don't know. I just only went in the council chamber, so I don't know. Greg, did you see anyone else in the building while you were still there?
nobody on the town side, and when I walked him out, there was nobody else there. So the only people I saw was myself, Dawn, and
Okay.
a representative from the bank.
So it was the front doors were unlocked.
All right, we'll check. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is Resolution 2020-11, the Infectious Disease Preparedness and Response Plan for COVID-19. Tom has included some OSHA guidelines and a one-page document on Governor Holcomb's guidelines. The only question, I think Dawn may have just said a little bit earlier, Dan, is when does our pandemic policy expire or terminate?
It expires. It expires whenever. It doesn't expire yet. It expires whenever you say it does. And so it's important to know that what happened is after you adopted your pandemic policy, Congress passed the federal Families First Coronavirus Response Act, which created two new federal employee benefits for all employees, and one was really emergency paid leave, which is like your pandemic policy. And it was essentially 2 weeks of paid leave if you could not work because of the reasons that you list in your pandemic policy. Then it created Emergency Family Medical Leave Act leave, which said that after the first 2 weeks, an employee could have up to 10 weeks of paid leave equal to 2/3 of the pay. So what we have currently is that if you guys were to suspend your pandemic leave policy tomorrow, then employees would still have up to 10 weeks of paid leave at 2/3 of their pay for the reasons that they can be paid now. So that's changed the game a little bit. So you guys will have to consider that going forward. If it is your intention that someone who is either sick or is gone for a related reason should receive their full pay, you'll need to leave your current policy in place. Because if you do not, they'll get a cut in benefits, because the federal law, although providing a benefit, is not a full pay benefit. And it's also limited. It's limited to those 10 weeks, and there's also a cap on how much an employee can get. So it really probably doesn't run the full 10 weeks for most people. So Tom and I and Ryan talked about this today, that we're going to need to, when you guys tell us you want your current pandemic policy to stop, we're going to need to build in a good transition of how that will work together. And so we're going to get you guys some information about that so you can make good decisions about what you want to do in terms of that, whether you want to leave yours in place or transition to the federal benefit. We'll give you the information. You guys can make the policy decisions. But so that's really complicates, I think, the decision making. When you started, you imposed it, and then it just could stop whenever you wanted. And now there's this new federal law that affects all employers.
So based on what you've just said, I think it's probably prudent then that we table this as well until you provide us more dialogue, because as you said, this is something that changes on a daily basis as well. And if we're going to come back and look at the other ordinance at our next meeting, maybe we can put this on the agenda at that time as well.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good plan. And like I said, we'll get you some information. I will also, we'll get you guys, we'll show you the ordinances we've done for some other clients. We've already worked through that with some clients and how they handled that. Really how they married these two, their local benefit with this federal benefit. We have to marry them together somehow. So we'll show you what some other people have done.
And any other comment from council members? Is everybody in agreement just to table then resolution 2020-11?
Just a quick question on with Dan. Is there a way to keep this as a dynamic document? You know, since it is always changing. I know we put things here and reading through it, it looks good, you know, with what we have, but obviously it's always changing. Is there anything that can be done to keep it so it could be revised constantly?
Well, that's what I like about your pandemic policy, actually, is your pandemic policy allows a great deal of flexibility. It adopts a full pay benefit for your people, and it's flexible in terms of how it is administered, because if your employees are working, they get paid. If they have a COVID-related leave, we call it, then you said, well, we want them to be paid as well. So what I call your pandemic policy provides great flexibility. You'll see in the information I gave you, the federal policy is not flexible at all. It is one size fits all, and it has limitations which will affect different employees in different ways depending on how much they make or the reasons for their COVID-related leave. So I'll lay that out. I like the pandemic policy that you have because it's the most flexible. When you transition into, if you transition into the federal, we call the Families First leave policies, it's going to become more rigid. And so I'll just give you that heads up.
Okay.
Also, one more thing for Steve, the infectious disease preparedness plan is pretty flexible too. There's a lot of general statements about workplace safety and allows us to adjust based on new information on safety protocols and such. So we try not to make it real prescriptive. Plainfield has a 17-page document. It's real prescriptive. This one was not, and it gave our department heads a lot of flexibility to create additional requirements if they felt they wanted to for their department as well. So we try to create a real flexible document exactly with that in mind.
Okay.
And I might say that Tom, that I recommended that strongly to Tom when we began talking about this back in March even. I thought the key ingredient to a good policy was going to be high degree of flexibility, since we, what we had thought yesterday is not true today in terms of what we know about this virus, just one day. So I encouraged Tom to build in as much flexibility as he could, because then they could administer it and not have to keep coming back to the council and ask for clarification or change of the rules, which may go to what you're talking about, because that's what I think some communities have done. They've been so overly prescriptive that then they've had to amend their policies 2, 3, and 4 times. So when Tom and I began talking about it, I strongly encourage that. I like what I see. Tom and I have talked about it more times than I'd like to admit, but I think that's from your point of view as policymakers, you want your policies to be flexible during these times, and you can really, we looked at Plainfield, I would, with all due respect to them, I think that they're going to have to look at that and amend it and change it over and over and over again. And I would hope that would not be, it's really not a very good way to do business.
Aaron, any comments?
Tom, can you let Dawn back in? Sounds like her laptop died and she's back in the waiting room, it looks like.
Brian, you're an IT guy. I like that.
Hey,
No,
I make a lot of
agree.
mistakes.
I agree. We need to wait and get the best information we have, and I don't think there's any issue with doing both of these next round.
Robert?
I'm trying to get her.
Okay, Dawn, she's gone, but all right, so let's move ahead. Then we'll table resolution 2020-11 and till our May 28th meeting. Next item on the agenda is legal counsel report. Mr. Taylor?
We've been having regular staff meetings with Ryan and Tom and working with Jody on planning issues. I just wanted to mention a couple things. A long time ago, Ryan Cannon and John Taylor started working on Avon Landing. And as you guys passed your ordinance tonight, they should get a pat on the back, because these things take months, and here we are finally. So I congratulate both of you for that hard work. One of the next things we'll be talking to you about is all the new laws that are coming up. We've made them, the new laws that will require your action. we're going to start working with the staff on those next week so we can get them staged on your agenda for introduction and the first meeting in June and adoption by the end of June, because these laws will take effect July 1st. There are going to be some, we'll get that to you. If you have questions, let us know. Thank you.
Dawn, I see that you're back. I didn't want to, let you not speak your mind. Did you have anything on with us tabling resolution 2020-11?
No.
That's the easy answer. Thank you.
Well, I feel like I was reprimanded.
Okay. The item on the agenda is public comment. Comments may be emailed to tklein@avongov.org or may be provided in the comments section for the meeting on YouTube. The public may comment on items on the agenda that are not a public hearing or on a specific matter within the council's jurisdiction. Tom, have you received any emails or any comments?
I have one comment from Tom Dickey. I'm not sure it was meant to be a public comment, but I was interpreting this as a comment for our meeting. It says, Avon team, thank you for your effort, creativity, patience, and a whole bunch of other adjectives in getting to this point. It seemed like a non-event watching the vote, but approval of the bond ordinance was a massive step forward. Congrats to UNS. Thanks again, Tom Dickey from the Hageman Group. And if you give me a second, I will check YouTube.
While you're checking, I just want to say thank you to Tom Dickey as well. I know this has been a long time coming, and we've had, players changed along the way, and I applaud them as well as I applaud my fellow council members and staff that have been working through this to get us to this point. And let us know when the groundbreaking is so we can get a shovel in the ground.
So I do have one comment from Thomas Matchin. He says, what about taxing the apartment complexes more to offer some property tax relief for homeowners?
Well, I mean, our taxing rate is set by the state. It's, flat rate. So it's 1% for residential, 2% for non-owner occupied, and 3% for commercial. So we really don't have any control over that tax amount.
Good response.
Is that it, Tom?
Yes.
Okay.
Greg?
Item on the, yes.
Greg, before we go, I wanted to say that we received word that our county economic development person, Jeff Pipkin, has given his resignation to the organization, so they'll be out looking for a new director.
You're not telling us that because you're going to apply for that position?
Mr. Klein and I have already had that discussion.
And the answer was?
That I have many things I want to accomplish in Avon.
All right.
Thank you.
Next thing on the agenda is council comment. Does any council members have anything they'd like to discuss before we sign off?
So real quick, I sent Tom a text this week, but I wanted to extend it to the rest of the staff and let you know that I appreciate and how all of your good work and how smooth this has went, because my expectations back in early March of how this was going to go were way more rough than what it's been. And so I applaud everyone's high adaptive capacity and your abilities to get things done moving forward. And so thank you. And I really appreciate it. I'm very pleased so far with how we've been able to make this work.
Thank you.
Aaron, anybody else? Any other council members? Julie, do you have anything to say?
Let me jump in here, Greg. I want to get something on our calendar for, well, to be honest, as soon as possible. We're now at a point where I think we can meet in person. I'd like to get an executive session for us to discuss and come to an agreement on Tom's expectations, and then as well to deliver those to Tom. If we can decide on a date and time now, that would be great. Thinking within the next week or two.
Quick question, Dan. Can we do in-person executive session, or can we do electronic executive session? What's our What can we do?
You can do either. You can do in person or remote. At least until June 4th. That's my answer. That's what the executive orders say. So yeah, you can do it remotely or in person.
If we can make it work, I think it would probably be better because I've fielded a lot of questions about this Q6 material, and I think everyone is excited about it, but I think there's probably a lot of explaining to do. So if everyone's comfortable with doing it in person, I think that'd probably be the best option.
Yeah, I'd prefer that myself.
Mhm, mhm.
We'll take precautions, of course, as many precautions as we can, but I think it would be best in person.
Well, I think it says we're allowed to, in this stage, have what, up to 25 people. So
Right.
I think we're still within guidelines on stage 2.
Maybe it would be good to say everyone just wear a mask, you know, that out of abundance of caution is not bad.
Robert, do you have any dates in mind?
Next, so if we're okay with next week, next Wednesday evening would be great, the 20th.
I cannot do it then because I have a bank board meeting that night.
For me, Thursday and Friday are okay too. Anybody have any problems with the 21st or the 22nd?
Thursday'd
No.
be better.
Thursday, 21st?
Yeah, I'm good for Thursday.
Yeah, let's do it that way.
6
Okay.
o'clock. It's been kind of our normal meetings during the week.
May 21st, 6 o'clock works. Chamber council chambers. That way we can space out.
Wait a minute, just a sec. I just got to see, is that the one appointment I said I had? No, I've got that in the morning. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, I'm good.
Tom, you want to send out an invite then for the 21st at 6 o'clock?
In person, yes.
And where
And
are you
Tom, do we
gonna-
have a on wheels whiteboard that might help? Because I got a feeling I'll need about 20-30 minutes maybe to just kind of walk everybody through this, and that would probably be a little bit easier for me if we had that.
Do you want to use like a PowerPoint presentation?
No, I need a whiteboard and markers to draw, and
Okay.
so if we have one on wheels or even one on a an easel that we can sit on there, that would be helpful.
I have like a,
Aaron, we have a big one at the police department that we can roll right over to wherever you want to use it, or you can live stream it from here, or whatever you'd like to do.
Jody, isn't that BZA night?
BZA doesn't have any business this month, so normally it is, but no BZA meeting.
Okay.
Steve, what's that picture of you?
I don't know. What's it showing? Oh, is it showing my screen? I don't know what's
Okay, then with council calendar,
back.
can we have our next meeting then on the 28th? Can we have that in person, or do we have to wait till after the 4th?
It's up to you. It's just that if you have an in-person meeting, you have to spread the room out, and you have to provide all the social distancing. Some places are checking people as they come in because the public will be there. So you would have to, if you're going to have an in-person meeting, you're going to have to take those precautions, additional precautions, and spread people out. So you would need to consider those issues. In some respects, the remote meetings are a lot easier because you don't have to screen anyone for health. So most of my clients are continuing these remote until they can sort all that out. I did have one client have an in-person meeting, and they had to rearrange their room and try to make people answer questions. So that's more difficult. Just something to think about.
If everybody's on board, let's continue to do it remotely then.
I mean, if we're not going to open the town hall to public on a normal workday, I don't think we should open it up for a meeting either.
Okay, good point.
I agree.
Yeah.
Any other council calendar items? If not, I appreciate everybody's time. I know it went a little bit longer, but we got a lot of information, and be safe. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Right, see y'all.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
You guys,
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks.
everyone.
Bye.